Can two people fall in love when they don't even speak the same language? In a crowded foreign city, a lost girl meets a boy who barely understands her words, but somehow understands her heart. This is a story about misunderstanding, connection, and the language of love that needs no translation. Asterisk, asterisk, the airport doors slid open, and a wave of hot air hit Hana Tanaka like a wall. She blinked against the sunlight. The noise outside was overwhelming. Car horns, shouting vendors, motorbikes roaring past. Jakarta was nothing like Tokyo. It was loud, messy, alive. Dragging her suitcase through the crowd, Hana checked her phone. The message from the university's exchange office read, "Your local buddy will meet you at the exit gate. His name is Raka." She looked around. Signs everywhere, but none she could read. Bahasa Indonesia looked strange to her eyes, like familiar letters rearranged into new rhythms. Then she heard it. Someone calling, "Miss Hana? You Hana-san?" A young man waved from near the exit, holding a small cardboard sign with her name, Hana, written in uneven handwriting. He was tall, tanned, wearing a university jacket, and smiling in a way that seemed both nervous and warm. "Yes, I'm Hana," she said, bowing slightly. He nodded quickly, clearly unsure of what to do next. "Oh, yes, yes. Welcome, Indonesia. Hot, yes." He pointed to the sky, wiping his forehead. Hana laughed softly. "Very hot," she replied. They both laughed, awkwardly, like two people standing on opposite sides of a bridge that had just been built, shaky, but enough to cross. They walked to the car park, Hana trying to pull her heavy luggage while Raka insisted on helping. Every few minutes, he would try to make small talk in broken English. "Yo. First time me come. Jakarta." "Yes," Hana answered. "For research. Traditional culture." "Ah, good. Good culture here. Many food, many. Hot," he said, laughing at his own words. Hana smiled politely, though she understood only half. It was strange. Normally, she liked silence. But with Raka, even silence felt alive. The ride from the airport was long. Outside the window, the city was a blur of colors, old buildings covered in posters, tangled power lines, food stalls spilling onto the streets. Children ran barefoot through puddles. Raka kept pointing things out, proud and enthusiastic. Market, people buy fruit. School, small but good. Durian, you try later. Hana nodded, pretending to understand. She wanted to say thank you, but didn't know how to in Indonesian. Instead, she smiled, a universal wordless thank you. When they finally reached the university dorm, Hana was drenched in sweat. The building looked old, but clean. Inside, a few students waved hello. She bowed instinctively, forgetting that people here didn't bow. "Okay, Miss Hana, you rest, yes?" Raka said. "Tomorrow, Ida. Show campus, okay," she said softly. "Thank you, Raka-san." He looked confused at the san, but smiled anyway. "No, just Raka," he said. "Just Raka," she repeated, trying out the sound. It made him blush a little, though he hid it by scratching his head. That night, Hana lay on her small dorm bed, listening to the sound of distant traffic. She opened her phone and typed a message into her translator app. "Thank you for helping me today. I'm sorry my English is not very good." She pressed send. A few seconds later, Raka replied, "No problem. My English also broken. We fixed together." Hana smiled at the message. She didn't realize it yet, but that small sentence would become the start of everything. We fixed together. The next morning, campus was alive with sound, students laughing, motorcycles humming, music from somewhere in the distance. Raka waited near the entrance, holding 2 cups of iced tea. "For you," he said, handing one to her. "Sweet. You like sweet." Hana took a sip. It was very sweet. Too sweet. But she nodded anyway. "Good," she said, smiling. He looked relieved. "Good. Sweet like, He paused, searching for the word. "Like friendship?" She laughed softly. "Yes, sweet like friendship." They started walking across the campus. Raka tried to explain things: the library, the cafeteria, the lake, but his English often tangled mid-sentence. Hana used her phone to translate some words, typing quickly while walking. Sometimes they'd both laugh when the translation came out wrong. "I like your smell," Raka's translation said once. "What?" Hana gasped, covering her mouth. No, he said quickly, embarrassed. "I mean not perfume. You smell nice, not smell." They both laughed until their faces turned red. For the first time since arriving, Hana felt safe. A new kind of conversation over the next few weeks. Raka and Hana spent almost every day together. He helped her with interviews for her research project. She helped him pronounce Japanese words. Sometimes they didn't speak at all. They'd just walk through the city, observing people, sharing street food, pointing at things they couldn't name. It was peaceful, almost cinematic. But every so often, miscommunication would slip in. Like the time Hana asked, "Can you pick me up at 6? And Raka came at 5, thinking pick me up meant wake me up. Or when Raka texted, "I like you very much," and Hana's translator turned it into "I appreciate you." She thought it was just politeness, not a confession. These small moments built a wall between them, invisible, but real still. Neither gave up trying to understand. An unexpected afternoon, humid afternoon. They sat in a small cafe near campus. The air smelled like coffee and rain. Raka was showing Hana how to say simple words in Bahasa. "Say this, aku suka kamu." Hana repeated, "Aku suka kamu." He chuckled. "Good, it means, I like you." She froze. "Oh, like friend." He hesitated. "Maybe. More than friend." They stared at each other for a second too long. The sound of the rain outside filled the silence. Then Hana laughed awkwardly, pretending she didn't notice the tension. "Indonesia language. Very difficult," she said quickly. "Yes," he murmured, looking away. "Very difficult." The air between them changed that day. Something unspoken had been said, even without perfect words. The quiet distance later that evening, Hana typed a message on her phone. "I enjoyed today. You teach me good words." But when it translated into Bahasa, it became, "I learned love from you today." Without realizing it, she sent it. Raka read it and froze. He reread it 3 times, heart pounding. Did she mean it? Or was it another translator mistake? He didn't know what to reply, so he said nothing. Hana waited. Minutes passed, then an hour. Still no reply. She frowned, thinking maybe she had offended him. That night, both of them lay in their rooms, staring at their phones, wondering what the other was really trying to say. The morning after their misunderstanding, Hana woke up with a heavy feeling in her chest. The sunlight creeping through the dorm window felt cold despite the Jakarta heat. Her phone lay still on the desk beside her bed. No new messages. Raka hadn't replied since last night. She picked up her phone and read the message she had sent. I learned love from you today. She realized now the translation must have been wrong. She only meant to say she had learned new words, not love. The idea that he might have misunderstood her made her face burn with embarrassment. Maybe he thought she was confessing something weird. Maybe he was laughing about it now. Hana turned off her phone and tried to focus on her notes. But every word looked blurry. Her mind kept wandering to Raka's awkward smile, the way he scratched his neck when he didn't know what to say. She didn't know why it mattered so much, but it did when she finally walked to campus. Her heart was pounding in a rhythm that made no sense. She didn't even know if Raka would be there today, but part of her hoped he would at the cafe near the university entrance. She saw him sitting by the window. He waved when he noticed her, but his smile was not the same as before. It looked careful, a little too polite. She walked over slowly. "Good morning," she said. "Morning," he answered. His English was soft, almost unsure. There was a small silence. "Sorry," Hana began, trying to force a smile. "My message yesterday. Maybe wrong translate." "Ah, yes," Raka said quickly, relief visible in his shoulders. "Translator crazy sometimes." They both laughed. It wasn't loud laughter, just a quiet one to fill the air between them. Still, it was enough to ease the tension, even if only for a moment. After a few seconds, Raka pointed at her notebook. "Research going good?" "Yes," she replied. "Today I go interview local artist." "You can help." "Of course," he said without hesitation. They went together to an old part of town where an elderly batik artist welcomed them. Into her small workshop, the air smelled like hot wax and dye. The woman smiled kindly but spoke no English at all. Hana relied on Raka's translation. "She say batik is story," Raka explained. "Every pattern is memory. If broken, story also broken." Hana nodded, writing everything down carefully. "Like life," she murmured. Raka looked at her and smiled. "Yes, like maybe. Love also." She didn't respond. Instead, she kept her eyes on her notebook, though her heartbeat sped up a little. The word love sounded heavier when he said it. When the interview ended, they walked through narrow streets filled with food stalls, children playing, and laundry hanging between houses. The city was loud, chaotic, and beautiful in its own way. Hana tried to make small talk. "Indonesia people very kind," she said. Raka nodded. "You kind too, but you shy." "Japanese people shy, yes." "Maybe," Hana said with a smile. "I not talk too much, not good," he teased. "You must talk more, talk a lot." "Like me?" She laughed softly. "If I talk like you, maybe world confused." He grinned. "Better confused than quiet." She looked at him, amused, but the sentence stayed in her head. better confused than quiet. Maybe he was right. Silence could sometimes be worse than mistakes. When they were about to part ways, Raka's phone rang. He spoke quickly in Bahasa, then looked at her with a grin. "My family dinner tonight. You come, me?" Hana pointed at her selfie. "Yes. My mother cook a lot. She liked guests. You come." Hana hesitated. She had only known him for a few weeks. Meeting his family sounded too close, but the hopeful look in his eyes made it hard to say no. "Okay," she said finally. Raka smiled wide. "Good. You try real food, not restaurant food." That evening, they took a bus to Raka's neighborhood, a narrow street full of small houses and the sound of laughter coming from open doors. Children chased a ball, and neighbors shouted greetings across the road. It was nothing like Tokyo's quiet order, but Hana found it strangely comforting. Raka's mother greeted her at the door, her eyes lighting up. "Oh, kentek sekalai," she said with delight. Raka laughed and translated, "She say you beautiful." Hana blushed and bowed slightly. "Thank you." Inside, the house was small but warm. The dinner table was covered with food Hana had never seen before. Bright colors, strong smells, steam rising from bowls. Raka's mother kept piling food onto her plate, speaking quickly in Bahasa while smiling. "Eat, eat." She insisted. Raka groaned. "Mom, she can't eat spicy." "It's okay," Hana said shyly. "I try." Minutes later, she was coughing and drinking water as tears formed in her eyes. The chili burned like fire. Raka couldn't stop laughing. "You strong, Hana." She laughed too, between coughs. "I try, but fire." Everyone at the table burst into laughter, including Raka's mother. The tension between them seemed to melt away for a while. After dinner, they sat outside under the dim porch light. The night air was warm and filled with the sound of crickets. Raka's mother went inside, leaving them alone. "Your mother very kind," Hana said softly. Raka nodded. "Yes, she like you. She say maybe you good girl for." He stopped mid-sentence. "For what?" Hana asked. He hesitated. "Nothing." She talked too much. She tilted her head. "Tell me." He sighed. "She say maybe you good girl for me." Hana froze. She didn't know where to look. "Oh," she said finally. "Sorry," he said quickly. "She joke only." Indonesian mom liked to joke, but his tone didn't sound like a joke. When he drove her back to the dorm, neither spoke much. The car was filled with silence and streetlights flashing through the windows. Before getting out, Hana turned to him. "Raka, thank you. Today I happy. Me too," he said quietly. They looked at each other for a long moment before she smiled, waved, and stepped out. Raka watched her until the dorm gate closed behind her. That night, he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her laughing at dinner, her hair falling over her face as she coughed from the spicy food. Something about her gentleness made his chest ache. He picked up his phone and typed slowly, checking every word with his translator. "Hana, I really like you. You are special. I feel good with you." He hesitated, but pressed send. In her dorm room. Hana was brushing her hair when the message came. She smiled when she saw his name, but when she read the translation, her expression changed. "You are special. I feel good with you." Her translator turned it into Japanese as "you make me feel satisfied." The wording felt wrong, too forward, almost inappropriate. She frowned, unsure what to think. Did he mean it romantically? Or was it just another translation mistake? Not knowing how to respond, she didn't reply. She turned off her phone and went to bed, her heart restless. The next day, they met again at the university. Hana tried to act normal, but she avoided his eyes. Raka noticed immediately. "You okay?" He asked. "Yes," she said quickly. "Just tired." He nodded, but he could tell something was off. During lunch, she barely talked. When she smiled, it didn't reach her eyes. Raka's chest tightened. He opened his phone and typed a question into his translator. "Did my message make you angry?" When he showed it to her, the translation appeared as "my words make you hurt." She frowned, then shook her head. "No, not hurt. Just confused." "Confused?" he repeated. "Yes, translation not clear," she said softly. "Oh," he murmured. He looked away, pretending to laugh. "Maybe next time I learn Japanese. Maybe next time I learn Indonesian," she replied, trying to smile. But it was a sad kind of smile. That afternoon, Hana walked home alone. The heat was heavy and sticky. She passed people chatting and laughing, families sitting outside their houses, all speaking words she couldn't understand. For the first time, she felt truly isolated. She thought about how easily people in her country communicated, quick, polite, clear. Here, everything felt harder, like walking through fog. And yet, when she thought of Raka, she didn't feel angry, just tired. Tired of trying to understand, tired of guessing meanings from half-translated words. But then she remembered something he had said earlier. Better confused than quiet. Maybe he was right. Maybe silence was worse than mistakes. That evening, the rain started pouring suddenly, loud against the dorm windows. Hana stood watching it for a long time. The city lights blurred behind the curtain of water. Her phone buzzed. A new message from Raka appeared on the screen. "I'm sorry if I make wrong words. I just like talk with you. Always." The grammar was broken, but the meaning was clear. He wasn't teasing or joking. He was being honest. Hana smiled faintly, her heart softening. She typed back carefully. "Me too. I like talk with you too." Her thumb hovered over the send button for a few seconds. Then she pressed it. Outside, the rain slowly began to ease. The thunder faded, leaving behind a quiet hum. Somewhere across the city, Raka looked at his phone and smiled too. Small, tired, but real. They still didn't understand each other perfectly, but in that moment, it didn't matter. They were trying, and for both of them, that was enough. The following week felt heavier for both of them. Hana and Raka still met at campus, still exchanged smiles. But something invisible lingered between them. It wasn't anger, just a quiet distance. The kind that grows when two people care but don't know how to say what they really feel. Raka tried to act normal. He still joked during group discussions and offered to carry her books. But he noticed how Hana's laughter had become shorter, her answers simpler. She was polite, kind as always, but no longer warm. He didn't understand what changed. Maybe his English was bad again. Maybe she regretted coming to dinner. Every night, he opened his translator app, typing long messages and deleting them before sending. He didn't want to make another mistake. One afternoon, while waiting for class, Raka overheard two of his friends talking about Hana. "She's pretty." "Yeah," one of them said. "Too pretty." The other laughed. "But you know these exchange girls, they never stay long." Raka's stomach tightened. He didn't know why it bothered him, but it did. When Hana arrived minutes later, smiling shyly and holding her notebook, he felt a strange fear that she might really leave soon, that everything between them was just temporary. During class, he barely listened to the lecture. He kept watching her from the side, memorizing how she tucked her hair behind her ear, how she wrote notes with careful precision. After class, Hana turned to him. "You okay?" He forced a smile. "Yes, just sleepy." She nodded, though she didn't believe it. Something in his tone sounded far away. That evening, Hana decided to text him first. Something she rarely did. "Are you free tomorrow? I found a place maybe you like." He replied quickly. "Yes, I won't see." The next day, she took him to a quiet book cafe near the old part of the city. The place smelled of coffee and paper, with soft music in the background. It was calm, almost like a hidden piece of her own country. Raka looked around and smiled. "Nice. You like quiet place, yes?" "Yes," Hana said, sitting across from him. "But I want you like too." "I like," he said. "If you hear, I like." She blushed slightly and hid it behind her cup of tea. "You always say nice words." Raka grinned. "Because true." They sat for a while, talking about simple things, books, food, music. It felt easy again, like before the confusion started. But then, while Hana was showing him something on her phone, a message popped up from another friend. "You and Raka look cute today." Raka read it accidentally. His smile faded. "Cute." He repeated. Hana froze. Sorry. My friend just joke. Cute." He said again, his voice lower this time. "Why she say that? She watch us." No, Hana said quickly, waving her hands. "Just photo from last week. She funny." But Raka didn't laugh. His mind was racing. "So, you talk about me with friend." Hana frowned, confused. "Yes, normal. I talk friend about you. Like story." "What story?" he asked, his tone suddenly sharp. "Just normal story." She said, "Why angry?" "I'm not angry," he said, though his expression said otherwise. "Just don't like." "Why?" "Because I serious," he muttered. "Not story." The table fell silent. Hana didn't know what to say. She didn't understand why a small joke had turned into something heavy. After a few seconds, she said softly, "I don't understand." Raka exhaled and rubbed his face. "Sorry, I like you, Hana." "Really? But I don't know what we are. Friends more." "I don't know." Hana's heart skipped. The word like again. She wasn't sure what it meant this time. She had learned that "I like you" in English could mean many things: affection, admiration, or love. She wanted to answer, but the translator in her mind felt broken. "How do you say I feel something too? But I'm scared because I don't understand you completely." She looked at him helplessly. "Raka, I also don't know." He nodded slowly. "Okay, maybe one day we know." They sat in silence again, sipping cold coffee that no longer tasted good. When they parted that evening, the goodbye felt strange, polite, but distant. Like a door quietly closing. Days passed. Messages became shorter. Good morning turned into morning. See you tomorrow became just okay. Raka missed her, but he didn't know how to fix things. He feared that any word might come out wrong again, so he said less. Hana, thinking he had lost interest, began to pull away too. One night, she sat alone in her dorm room, scrolling through their old chat history. Photos from their first trip, the dinner with his family, their awkward jokes. She smiled, then sighed. Maybe this was what people meant by lost in translation. Not just words, feelings too. The next morning, she decided to send him a message in Bahasa, using the translator carefully. Can we talk? I don't want misunderstanding. Raka replied almost immediately. Yes, tonight. They met at the same cafe where they first studied together. The air was quiet. Hana arrived first, nervous. She rehearsed what she wanted to say, but when he walked in, all the words disappeared. Hi, she said. Hi, he answered, sitting down. She took a deep breath. Raka, I think we both try, but maybe we always mistake. I don't want you sad because my wrong word. He stared at her, confused. You make me not sad. You make me happy. But sometimes, she said softly, you look hurt. He looked down at his cup. Maybe because I think too much. I don't know what you feel. You smile, but maybe not same smile like before. Her throat tightened. I still like talk with you. He looked up. Only talk. She froze. What? He leaned forward slightly. You only like talk. Or more. She hesitated. Her heart was beating fast. Raka, in my country, we not say fast. We slow. Careful. He smiled bitterly. Maybe too careful. His words hit her harder than he meant. She looked away, blinking quickly. I'm sorry, he said, noticing her reaction. I just don't know what we are. She whispered, me too. They both laughed softly, but it wasn't happy laughter. It was tired. Raka finally said, maybe I need stop thinking. Just friend. Yes. The word friend hung in the air like a sharp knife. Hana's chest ached, but she nodded. Yes. Friend? They both knew it wasn't what either of them really wanted, but it was easier than trying to translate feelings they couldn't explain. The conversation ended there. They finished their drinks in silence. When they walked out, the city lights reflected on wet streets. It had rained earlier. Take care. Raka said quietly, you too. She answered. Then they walked in opposite directions. That night, Hana cried for the first time since coming to Indonesia. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just quiet tears falling onto her pillow as she tried to convince herself that being friends was enough. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. Meanwhile, Raka sat on his motorbike outside his house, staring at his phone. He wanted to text her, to say something, anything. But the only words that came to mind felt useless. In the following days, they didn't meet at all. Hana buried herself in her research, spending hours writing reports and avoiding places they used to go. Raka focused on his part-time job, coming home late every night just to fall asleep in exhaustion. But despite their silence, Both kept checking their phones every night, waiting for a message that never came. Weeks later, during a campus event, Hana stood on stage to present her final project about cultural misunderstanding. Her voice was calm, but inside she was trembling. She spoke about how languages can create bridges or walls, how emotions can disappear between translations, when she said, "Sometimes what we really mean gets lost, not because we don't care, but because we don't know how to say it." She saw Raka standing in the crowd. Their eyes met for a brief moment. After the presentation, he walked up to her. "Good speech," he said softly. "Thank you," she replied. "You talk about us?" he asked. She hesitated. "Maybe a little." He smiled sadly. "Then you write." "We lost words." "Maybe not lost," she said. "Maybe just waiting to be found." He looked at her for a long second. Then he nodded. "Maybe." They stood there, surrounded by people clapping and laughing, yet feeling completely alone together. Neither reached out. Neither spoke again. That night, Hana packed her bags. Her exchange program was ending. She was supposed to return to Japan the next morning. She wanted to tell him goodbye properly, but she didn't know how. She wrote a message and deleted it again and again. Finally, she typed one last thing and pressed send. "Thank you, Raka, for everything. I learned more than language here." When Raka saw the message, he didn't reply. He didn't know what to say. He went to his window and looked out at the city lights, wondering if she was doing the same. For the first time, he realized that love didn't always need perfect words, but sometimes silence came too late. The airport was crowded that morning. Announcements echoed through the terminal, mixing with the sound of rolling luggage and quiet goodbyes. Hana stood near the boarding gate, clutching her passport and phone. Her flight to Tokyo would leave in 40 minutes. Raka stood a few meters away, hands deep in his pockets, trying to act calm, but his eyes gave him away, restless, uncertain, and heavy with words he couldn't say. Hana looked at him and forced a smile. "Thank you for coming." "Of course," he said quietly. "I want to see you go." They stood there, both unsure of what to say next. Around them, families hugged, couples kissed, friends laughed. But between them, silence grew heavier. "I'll message you," Hana said finally. "Okay," he nodded. "I'll wait." When her flight was announced, she bowed slightly, polite, careful, distant. He wanted to hug her, but he hesitated, afraid she might pull away. So he just said, "Take care, Hana." "You too," she whispered. Then she walked away, not looking back. When the plane took off, Raka watched from the airport window until the white shape disappeared into the clouds. Only then did he realize how empty everything suddenly felt. For days, he went through his routine, work, campus, home, but nothing felt the same. The city looked duller, quieter. He opened his phone every night, waiting for her message. It came 3 days later. "Hi, Raka. I'm home. Cold here. Miss warm weather." He smiled at the screen, typing back quickly, "Miss you too." Not only weather, it took her 6 hours to reply because of the time difference. "Haha, maybe you miss sambal more." He laughed, even though she couldn't hear it. "No, I miss you more than sambal." And just like that, their routine began again. Short messages, small jokes, photos of daily life. Hana sent pictures of Tokyo's busy streets, cherry blossoms, and her cat. Raka sent pictures of Jakarta sunsets, his motorbike, his messy desk. For a while, it felt almost normal. But as weeks passed, the distance started to show. Sometimes Raka sent a message, and she didn't reply until the next morning. Sometimes Hana asked a question, and he only answered with one word. Different time zones made everything harder. When she woke up, he was asleep. When he was free, she was at work or school. Their conversations became shorter, their emojis fewer. One night, Raka finally asked, "You busy lately?" "Yes," Hana replied. "New project?" "Sorry, late reply," he typed back. It's okay, but deep down, it wasn't. He missed her presence, the way she used to ask about his day, or send random pictures just to make him smile. He began to wonder if maybe she was moving on. A few days later, he saw something that made his chest tighten. On her social media, she had posted a photo at a cafe, smiling with a man beside her. The caption read, "Great to catch up after years." Raka stared at the photo for a long time. The man looked close to her, leaning in slightly. He told himself not to overthink it, but he did. That night, he typed, "You go cafe today?" "Yes," she replied. "Old friend from university boy?" he asked. There was a long pause before her next message came. "Yes, but just friend." "Okay," he typed, though his hands trembled a little. After that, he didn't reply again that night. Hana stared at her screen, frowning. She didn't understand why his tone suddenly changed. She reread her message, wondering if something sounded wrong. Maybe he felt jealous. But how could she explain that it was really nothing without sounding defensive? The next morning, she tried to lighten the mood. "Good morning. Look, snow today." No reply. She waited hours, then typed again. "You okay?" Still nothing. When he finally replied that night, it was short. "Busy." The coldness in that single word hurt more than she expected. The days that followed were filled with half-hearted conversations, polite, shallow, empty. Hana tried to fix things. She sent longer messages, even voice notes, but he replied with shorter and shorter answers, until one night, she decided to call him. The video call rang for a long time before he finally answered. His face appeared tired and expressionless. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi, you busy?" "No." "Then, what's wrong?" she asked. He sighed. "Nothing. Just tired." "Raka, you always tired lately." "Maybe because I think too much." She frowned. "About what?" "About us." Her heart dropped. "What about us?" He looked straight at the camera. "We different, Hana. Different world, different time. You have new life there." "That's not true," she said quickly. "I still think about you every day." He smiled weakly. "Maybe, but thinking not same as being here." She felt a lump in her throat. "So you won't stop?" He shook his head. "I don't know. I just don't want to be problem for you." "You are not problem," she said firmly. But he didn't answer. The silence stretched. She could see he was trying to hide his sadness behind calm words, but his eyes gave him away. Finally, he said quietly, Sometimes love not enough if words always wrong. Her eyes filled with tears. Then teach me the right words. He looked at her through the screen for a long time, then whispered, maybe we need new translation. The call ended with no goodbye. That night, Hana cried again. Not the quiet kind this time, but the kind that came from frustration and helplessness. She hated the distance, the misunderstanding, the way their hearts seemed close, but their worlds didn't match. Days turned into weeks. Their messages became even less frequent. One day, Raka sent only a single text, "Take care always." Hana stared at it, confused. It sounded like a goodbye. She typed, "Why you say like that?" But he never replied. She waited for days, checking her phone every hour. Nothing. When she finally gathered the courage to call, the number didn't connect. Maybe his phone was off. Maybe he changed it. She didn't know. Weeks later, she received a message from one of their mutual friends in Indonesia. "Hana, did you know Raka moved? He's working in another city now." Her hands trembled as she read it. So he really left. No message. No goodbye. She closed her eyes, trying to stay calm. Maybe he needed space. Maybe he was tired. But deep down, she knew. He was gone. That night, she wrote him a long message she never sent. "Raka, I wish I could tell you that I didn't mean to hurt you. I just didn't know the right words. I still remember your mother's smile, your laugh, your city's warmth. Maybe one day we can talk again, without translation. Until then, I'll keep learning, not language, but how to understand you." She saved it in her notes, then turned off her phone. Outside, snow kept falling quietly over Tokyo, cold, endless, and silent. Thousands of miles away, Raka stood by the sea in his new city. The waves crashed softly against the rocks. He thought about sending a message, just one, to say he missed her, but he didn't. He was afraid she'd already moved on. Instead, he whispered to the wind, maybe in another language, another time. His phone buzzed suddenly, an old notification from Hana, one he hadn't opened before he left. "Thank you, Raka, for everything. I learn more than language here." He stared at the screen for a long time. Then, for the first time in weeks, he smiled. It had been almost 6 months since Hana returned to Japan. Spring had arrived, melting away the last traces of winter. The cherry blossoms were blooming again, but this time they didn't feel as beautiful as before. Every morning, she walked past the same cafe near her apartment on the way to work. She always ordered the same thing, iced matcha latte, and sat by the window with her laptop. To anyone else, she looked like an ordinary young woman living an ordinary life. But inside, something still felt unfinished. She hadn't heard from Raka since the last message. "Take care always." She had tried to forget, tried to tell herself it was just timing, just distance. But sometimes, when the city got quiet and her phone screen glowed in the dark, she found herself scrolling through their old photos again. One afternoon, while cleaning her apartment, she found the batik cloth Raka had given her as a gift on her last day in Indonesia. The pattern was blue and gold, with tiny cracks in the dye that looked like veins of lightning. She remembered what Raka had said back then. "Every line is story. If broken, story also broken." She sat on the floor, holding it gently, and whispered to herself, maybe Broken Story can still continue. That night, she opened her old chat with him. The messages stopped months ago, but the last one from him was still there, unread by him. Maybe forgotten. She typed slowly, hesitated, then deleted the message again. Instead, she opened her laptop and began writing something else. It started as a journal entry, but soon it became more like a letter. Dear Raka, I don't know if you'll ever read this. Maybe you changed your number. Maybe you forgot me. I just want to say that I finally understand what you meant. That love isn't about words. It's about trying even when the words don't fit. I was scared before. I wanted everything to be perfect, like a sentence with no grammar mistake. But life isn't like that. Maybe love isn't either. She stopped, staring at the blinking cursor. For the first time, writing didn't hurt. It felt like breathing. A few weeks later, her boss asked if she wanted to attend a cultural exchange conference in Jakarta. Hana froze when she heard the city's name. It felt like fate was testing her. Jakarta. She repeated, yes, her boss said, you can present your research about cross-cultural communication. You have experience there, right? She nodded slowly. Yes, I do. 3 weeks later, she was on a plane again. Same route, same city, but this time with a different heart. When she arrived, Jakarta felt both familiar and foreign. The air was still warm, the traffic still chaotic, the people still smiling. But this time, she wasn't the same Hana who came before Dot at the hotel. She unpacked and took out the batik cloth, placing it carefully on the table. It felt like bringing a piece of unfinished memory home. The next morning, she attended the conference. The room was full of people from different countries, all discussing culture, language, and communication. When it was her turn to speak, she took a deep breath and began. Language, she said, is not only words. It's also silence, gesture, and meaning that cannot be translated. As she spoke, she saw some people nodding, but her voice trembled slightly when she added, sometimes, misunderstanding doesn't mean failure. It means we are trying, and that effort itself is a kind of love. When the presentation ended, people clapped. Hana smiled politely, but inside her chest, her heart was pounding. She didn't know why. Maybe because the words she just said weren't only about language. They were about him. After the event, she walked through the city alone. She visited the cafe near the university, the one where she and Raka used to sit for hours. It was still there, though a little changed. The barista didn't recognize her. She sat at the same corner table, ordering the same coffee he used to drink, kopi susu. The first sip brought a rush of memories. She could almost hear his voice again, teasing, patient, warm. She took out her phone and stared at his name in her old chat list. Should she send a message? Would he even read it? After a few minutes, she typed, "Hi, I'm in Jakarta again, just for work. I hope you're doing well." She hesitated, then pressed send. Hours passed. No reply. That night, she walked along the city streets, neon lights reflecting off wet pavement after a brief rain. Her chest felt heavy, but she told herself she had done enough. At least she had tried. But just as she was about to go to sleep, her phone buzzed. A message from him. Hana, really you? You here now? Her hands shook as she typed back. Yes, for conference. Just few days. He replied, can we meet? She stared at the screen for a long second before answering. Yes, tomorrow? Tomorrow, he said that the next day. They met at the same spot where they had once said goodbye. The small cafe near the university. Raka arrived first, sitting nervously by the window. He looked a little different, his hair shorter, his face slightly tanned. When Hana walked in, his breath caught for a moment. She looked almost the same, just calmer, older somehow. They both smiled awkwardly. Hi, he said. Hi. She replied. For a few seconds, neither spoke. Then they both laughed quietly, breaking the ice. You look good, he said. You too, she answered. They talked about small things at first, work, travel, mutual friends. But under the polite words, there was tension, the kind that comes from everything left unsaid. Finally, Hana said softly, I'm sorry. Raka frowned. For what? For before. For not understanding. For being scared. He looked down at his coffee, silent. Then he said, I'm sorry too. For leaving without goodbye. You did say goodbye, she said gently. Just not with words. He smiled faintly. Still, I regret it. They sat there for a while, both quiet but not uncomfortable. The silence between them felt different this time. Not empty, but peaceful. Hana took out the batik cloth from her bag and placed it on the table. Remember this? Raka's eyes softened. Of course. You said if the pattern is broken, the story also broken, she said. But maybe broken can be fixed. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Maybe stories still continue. Their eyes met, and for the first time in a long while, they understood each other without needing translation. When they left the cafe, the sun was setting. The city glowed in gold light, and the air smelled like rain again. They walked side by side down the crowded street. Do you still get lost with translation apps? He asked. She laughed. Sometimes, but I learned some Bahasa now. Oh. He smiled. Say something. She thought for a second, then said slowly, Aku. Senang ketemu kamu lagi. Raka stopped walking. His smile grew wider. That means you happy to see me again. Yes, she said softly. Very happy. He looked at her. Really looked at her. And for a moment, it felt like the noise of the city faded away. Me too, Hana. Very happy. They didn't say anything more. They didn't need to. The unspoken words filled the space between them. All the mistakes, the distance, the missed chances. Somehow, it all felt worth it. That night, when Hana returned to her hotel, she opened her journal again. She wrote, maybe love doesn't need perfect grammar. Maybe it just needs two people willing to keep trying, even when the translation breaks. Because sometimes, the most beautiful things are the ones we learn the hardest way. She looked out the window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Raka was probably smiling too, thinking the same thing. That love, after all, wasn't lost in translation. It was just waiting to be understood. The morning after they met again, Hana woke up earlier than usual. The city outside her window was still half asleep, wrapped in mist and the faint sound of motorbikes starting. She sat by the window, sipping her coffee, watching the sky turn from gray to pale orange. Jakarta felt different now. The noise, the chaos, the humidity. It no longer felt overwhelming. It felt alive. It reminded her of him. She opened her phone and saw a new message. Raka, good morning. You busy today? Hana, not really. My flight is tomorrow. Raka, oh. Can I see you before you go? Hana, of course. They agreed to meet that afternoon at the old city park. The one with the white colonial buildings and the slow-moving bicycles for rent. When Hana arrived, Raka was already there, waiting under the big tree near the fountain. He was holding two bottles of iced tea. When he saw her, he smiled the same way he always did, shy but warm. You still like tea, right? He asked. Yes, she said, taking one. Thank you. They sat on a bench under the tree, watching children chase pigeons and couples taking photos. For a while, neither of them said much. It wasn't awkward this time. It was peaceful. Finally, Raka said softly, you go back tomorrow. Hana nodded. Yes, I'll miss this place. He looked at her for a moment, then said, you miss Jakarta, or something in Jakarta. She smiled a little. Maybe both. He laughed quietly, scratching his neck. I was scared to see you again. You know? Why? Because I thought maybe I already forgot how to talk to you. She turned to him. You didn't forget. We're talking now. He smiled, looking at the ground. Still, I remember before. We always use app. Sometimes wrong, sometimes funny, sometimes painful, Hana added. He nodded. Yes, but I think that's how we learn. The sun began to set slowly, turning the sky orange and gold. The wind carried the smell of fried food from the street vendors. It was simple, imperfect, but real. Hana looked around, then said, you know, when I went back to Japan, I kept thinking about that day, the day I left. I thought maybe if we said more, things would be different. Raka shook his head gently. Maybe not. Maybe it happened how it must happen. If not broken, maybe we don't understand. She looked at him, quietly impressed by how much he had changed. His English was better now, not perfect, but confident. You've improved a lot, she said. He chuckled. I practice. I talk to tourists. And sometimes I read our old messages. Her heart skipped a beat. You still have them. He nodded. All, even the one you didn't send. She froze. You saw that. He smiled. Yes, the letter. You wrote about trying even when words not perfect. Her face warmed. I didn't think you'd ever see that. I did, he said, and that message made me brave again. They both fell silent for a moment, the air between them thick with emotion. Then Raka spoke again, this time more serious. I don't know what will happen after this. You live far. I don't have big job or big money, but I want to try again, if you want to. Hana looked at him. His expression was sincere. No grand gestures, no dramatic tone, just quiet truth. I don't know the future either, she said, but I know I still care. And maybe that's enough to start again. He smiled softly, relief showing in his eyes. Maybe we can meet halfway, she added. You come to Japan someday. I'll teach you Japanese. You teach me Bahasa. He laughed. Deal. As the sun dipped below the skyline, they stood up and began walking through the park. Children were still playing, and an old man played guitar near the fountain, singing a love song in Bahasa Indonesia that Hana didn't fully understand. But she didn't need to. The melody said enough. They stopped near a small bridge overlooking the canal. The water reflected the fading light, shimmering like glass. Raka looked at her and said, "Do you remember what you told me before? That sometimes love lost in translation." "Yes," she said. He smiled gently. "Maybe love not lost. Maybe just waiting for right language." She smiled back. "Maybe that language is silence." He nodded. "Or maybe heart." They stood there together, the evening breeze brushing past them, carrying both the quiet and the unspoken words. After a while, Hana whispered, "I wish I could stay longer." "Then come back soon," Raka said softly. "Next time, no app. Just us," she laughed. "Promise, promise," he echoed. That night, back in her hotel room, Hana packed her suitcase slowly. She folded her clothes, tucked the batik cloth neatly between them, and paused for a moment. She took out her journal one last time and wrote, "Some words don't need translation. Some feelings don't need explanation." I learned that love is not about finding someone who speaks your language. It's about finding someone who wants to understand you, even when you can't find the right words. She closed the book, turned off the light, and lay down with a calm smile. The next morning, she checked out early. The sky was cloudy, but bright. As she walked through the airport terminal, she looked around, part of her still hoping to see him one last time. When she reached the departure gate, her phone buzzed. A message. "Raka, look up." She looked around, and there he was, standing just beyond the glass divider, waving. He looked a little breathless, like he'd run all the way there. He held up a small paper sign that said, "Safe flight. Don't forget our story." Hana laughed and pressed her hand to the glass. "I won't," she mouthed. Raka smiled. "See you soon," he mouthed back. Then the announcement called for boarding. Hana took one last look, then turned toward the gate. Her steps were steady, her heart full dot as the plane rose above the city. She looked out the window. The clouds parted just enough to show the streets below, the place where everything began, where love was once lost in translation, but finally found in understanding. She leaned back, closed her eyes, and whispered to herself, "No translation needed." Outside, the sky stretched wide and endless, like a new beginning. The end asterisk asterisk to strangers. 2 languages. 1 connection that almost disappeared in the silence between words. What happens when love gets lost in translation, but somehow finds its way back again? This is their story of miscommunication, heartbreak, and the quiet power of understanding.